Next, from Springfield, Democrat senators hold a press conference to announce the features of their so-called comeback agenda. This runs about 40 minutes.
Good morning, all. I'm Don Harmon, the President Pro Tem of the Senate, a Democrat from Oak Park, from the 39th Legislative District. And we're operating today on standard Senate time. I apologize to all of you who've been waiting. We do have several of our colleagues from both the House and the Senate we are hoping will join us here, but we don't want to waste any more of your time, so we wanted to get started. We're here today to unveil the Illinois comeback agenda. I just want to give you a little commentary on how this started. This was one of those organic endeavors here in Springfield. It started, at least on the Senate side, with a handful of us who were so frustrated with the lack of progress, the inability to move any positive agenda forward, and this feeling like all we were doing was fighting with other folks and saying no to other ideas. We wanted to be for something. We wanted to outline a vision of where Illinois could go. We had a real sense from our constituents that they felt like Springfield was broken and it wasn't working for them. It was working for the insiders and the special interests. And we wanted to put together an agenda that acknowledged that and addressed their concerns. You're going to hear from several members of both the House and the Senate, and we'll be happy to take detailed questions. But just broadly speaking, we understood the concerns that folks were feeling back in our districts, the real people, and tried to address those with 5 basic buckets of items, of ideas. The first, obviously, is trying to fix our budget. There's no simple solution to that, but we want to take a crack at coming up with a legislative agenda that fixes the budget for the real people who depend on that. A big part of that is reforming government and in large part trying to take the money out of politics. We feel like the special interests that fund campaigns have too large a voice and are too often the first consideration in policy making. Policy making should be for the folks in our districts that we represent, and we wanted to try to put them first. We want to invest in jobs and create really meaningful and important jobs in Illinois and encourage investment in that way. We want to make sure we have a world-class education system and that people can achieve their dreams. And we want to create safe and healthy communities. We want to make sure that government works for the folks who feel like they've been left behind. I'm going to turn the microphone over to several of my colleagues, and we will be able to answer more detailed questions about the specific proposals that we're offering, as well as the general vision we have for the state of Illinois. So are we going to Representative Moeller next?
Thank you, Senator. I'm happy to stand here with my colleagues today to launch the Illinois comeback agenda. As Senator Harmon mentioned, in talking to average citizens and constituents across the state, people are tired of the partisan gridlock that has paralyzed Springfield and has left us in the situation we find ourselves with the budget stalemate and a seeming lack of progress on moving forward on the policy agenda items that are important to average people here in Illinois. Making Illinois competitive as a state, keeping jobs here in Illinois, providing for working families, investing in our education, investing in our infrastructure, and creating a situation where we are growing our economy and creating opportunities for better lives for our citizens. And this effort is moving beyond the stalemate and the gridlock that we find with the governor and our leaders, and it's a movement of rank and file legislators recognizing the need to address the problems here in Illinois. I think we have some very common sense policies and legislation that have been filed that will help create the opportunities for movement and moving forward. We have solutions that address what average people and businesses and communities want in this state. outside of the special interests and the political games that have been played over the past 2 years. So I'm proud to stand here with my colleagues. It's time that we move beyond the gridlock that we are facing. Illinoisans deserve better than what we've seen in the last 2 years, and I look forward to moving our agenda forward. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Representative Carol Ammons. I represent Champaign-Urbana. Part of this initiative, as our Senator and Representative just announced, this initiative was for us to have a clear agenda that really reflected what we were hearing in our districts from the people in the district. We want education to be an option for people in our district, and we wanted some solutions to be on the table. So we didn't want to just put the big ideas out in this agenda, but we wanted to tie it to specific legislative initiatives that would get us to the big idea. And that's what this agenda has produced. And so I'm very excited about not only the number of colleagues that are standing here that believe that we really do need not only to tie these to our agenda, but to let people know what that agenda is. Often people say they don't know what's going on in Springfield, they can't make heads or tails of it, and all you hear is political rhetoric and commercials and campaign announcements. But what we wanted to do is say, no, we are collectively working on the House and the Senate side to move a progressive agenda that really addresses the needs of average people. Those who want to send their children to child care, we should be able to meet that need as well as allow them to go to school and work at the same time. It really should not be an either or, and that's what it has become. And so we want to stop that as the process that we do government and start reinstituting the government for the people, by the people, and that is what this agenda represents. So I thank my colleagues, certainly on the House side and the Senate side, for seeing this as an initiative that they can get behind and grow the agenda so that the people fit into the government as opposed to the other way around.
Good afternoon. I'm Representative Letisa Wallace. I represent the 67th District, which is basically Rockford, Illinois. I'm sure my colleagues have covered all that we have included and what we are working toward to make sure that Illinois is greater for all of its citizens. Obviously, one of the biggest pieces that I've pushed over the last couple of years is making sure that families have access to affordable child care. It is one way for them to be able to uplift themselves from poverty and to go on to be sustainable or self-sustaining. Obviously, this comeback agenda is one that puts families first, that puts individuals first, not politics, not ideology, not rhetoric. I am so happy to stand with my colleagues. I'm happy to continue to work with them as we push forth an agenda that truly puts the citizens of Illinois first and not last. So thank you for allowing me to slide into this conference.
Before Representative Guzzardi comes up, we've been joined by several senators. We were waiting for Senator Omar Aquino, who had some thoughts, but Senator Heather Staines is with us, Senator Julie Morrison, Senator Laura Murphy, Senator Pat McGuire. I think I've got all my senators covered. Did any of you have thoughts that you wanted to add? Or okay, come on up if you change your minds. But and if Omar arrives, we'll make sure we bring him up. But I'll turn it over to Representative Guzzardi now.
Thank you and good morning. My name is Will Guzzardi. I'm state representative from the 39th District. I want to talk a little bit about how we got here. You know, all of us up here, and I think all of us in the legislature are frustrated. We share the frustrations of our constituents that that government simply isn't working for people at the moment, right? That our budget is broken and that our basic services aren't being provided. So we started these conversations late last fall and have been having them for the past several months about what kind of ideas could we put forward to try to break out of the gridlock that we find ourselves in. And I think that in talking to our constituents, and this has been said a little bit already, I think the frustration on the part of our constituents was that as we said no to ideas that we didn't like, you know, we weren't doing a good enough job of putting forth the ideas that we believed in. And the concern there is that it makes it seem like we think that the status quo is just fine, right? If we're saying no to change, then do we think that the way things are is okay? And we want to be really clear that we know that the status quo isn't working for the people in Illinois. We know that the way things are going in our state is taking a tremendous toll on people in all of our districts and all of our communities around the state. And so we have some ideas too about how we can move the state forward, how we can get ourselves out of the mess that we're in, and not only in the immediate term, but also to set our state on the path long term for stability, for growth, and for better performance. So, we can talk more specifically about some of the legislative ideas, but I think it's really important to note that there's two pieces of this agenda, right? In each one of these issue areas that are so important to all of us, whether it's education or the budget or, making sure that our government works for people or growing jobs. In each of these areas, we've laid out a series of long-term priorities and values that we all share, and that we believe the people of Illinois share with us as well. And we've also identified one legislative initiative in each area that we are going to push for this session in Springfield. So we don't intend to suggest that those bills are going to solve all the problems of our state by any means, but we do believe that this agenda, these pieces of legislation, if we can advance them, we're going to start moving our state toward the vision that we have. So it's an ambitious agenda. There's a lot of pieces of this agenda that are going to be, it's going to take a concerted effort to pass these pieces, but ultimately we really believe that we've set forth a vision here of how we can move our state forward, and we look forward as a group to working to make it happen. So with that, I believe if there aren't, we don't have Senator Aquino yet, so I think we'll take questions from the folks in the room.
Senator Terry Link has just joined us as well.
The first thing I heard was Illinois is broken, it works for the insiders, we need good jobs, world-class education. A couple of octaves deeper, and I would think I was listening to one of Governor Rauner's campaign commercials. So it sounds like we agree on that. Where is he and where are the Republicans on this?
Well, apparently the Republicans have come out against our plan an hour or so before we unveiled it, which I think frankly just proves the point. The mood down here is one of just saying no to everybody. And we're fighting over silly things. And people back home don't really care. They want us to fix the problems. They want us to be proactive and try to solve problems in a way that solves their problems, not the insiders' problems. So we don't disagree on some of the problems that the state's facing. We certainly have disagreements as to what the better solution would be. And that's what we're trying to offer today, is solutions that would work for the folks we represent. The folks that are represented by Democrats and Republicans.
And your colleagues in the Senate have been working for several months on a bipartisan plan. Yesterday we saw Senator Brady come up with a more conservative proposal. Today you're here with a more progressive proposal. Does that mean that there is availability to meet in the middle more, and that efforts at bipartisanship just aren't going to move forward?
We in the Senate certainly aren't abandoning a commitment to trying to advance a bipartisan solution. I wish that we had Republicans joining us here today. This isn't a partisan proposal. This should be a bipartisan effort. As you said, the problems we've identified are the same problems our Republican colleagues have identified. We should be able to work together on solutions. I think the efforts in the Senate to reach a grand bargain have been sincere, and the partnership that we've had with some Senate Republicans really reflects a change in tone. And I hope that will still come to fruition. I'm increasingly skeptical, given the nature of some of the Republican opposition. But that's no reason why we shouldn't offer a broader outline of things that we as Democrats and Republicans, looking out for the best interests of the people we represent, can support.
So I want to add one thing to that answer, which is simply to say that I think this is an important part of working us toward a solution to this crisis. I think that in order to make a deal, you need something for everybody, right? And I think us outlining these values and visions of what we think needs to be done, I think that's going to be vital in reaching compromise, so that we can have something for everybody in a compromise, right?
So are you saying that
Right.
this is a way to kind of meet halfway when it comes to pension reform, property tax freeze, workers' comp reform, and these things that the Republicans put out an hour ago, saying this doesn't address property tax relief of any kind. Can you address some of those concerns that the GOP's already raised?
Like as I said, I don't think that it's a question of any disagreement over the fundamental problems facing the state. There's a real disagreement as to the solutions, and I think some of the solutions that they're offering don't benefit the folks that we represent directly. They benefit their stakeholders. And I don't think advancing an agenda that benefits corporate Illinois is necessarily going to be good for the people we represent. So we need to offer an alternative that's progressive and thoughtful and forward-looking, and that's why we're here today.
Senator, you sound like you're not willing to work with them. They would say it's going to help everyone if we can keep more businesses or attract more businesses in Illinois. And when we have some of the highest work comp in the country, that's an impediment to direct tax on businesses.
We've been working in the Senate on a bargain that includes those agreements. We understand with Republicans, and we understand that. We also understand that some of these proposed changes don't benefit the people that live in our districts as much as they benefit the corporate interests. And that's a fair debate to have. And we're willing to have that debate any day.
Is that a bad thing to help corporate interests?
It's not a bad thing if helping corporate interests helps the people we represent. But if it only helps the corporate interests, then we have to think about what it is we're doing and why.
And I'll say this too, that we've heard over and over and over again for the last 2 years about how the governor plans to solve these problems, right? About the ideas that are going to help business and make Illinois supposedly more business friendly, right? The objective of this is to lay out another set of ideas, right? I think that there's no need to give any further voice to that set of opinions because we've heard it plenty, right? Here we want to go, we want to say to the people of Illinois, this is a different path to move our state forward, which starts with you, which starts with the families in our state, which starts with working people, which starts with people seeking an education. We're going to start with people in our communities and invest in our state that way. And we can have a contest of ideas and figure out how to build something together.
The nub of the issue, listening to the Republicans yesterday and you today, it's about working together. It's not about having an alternative agenda. The Republicans would say, yes, the governor spoke, and yes, we have our ideas, but the Democrats are obstructionists. They won't let us or even consider our ideas, so we have 2 years of no action. That would be their point. Can you all just get some Republicans in here and put together, I think someone in the press, just in private conversations, are wondering how long before the frustration of the backbenchers boils to the top and they take the lead here instead of allowing a few people in positions of power to be like corks in the bottle.
Right, but so let me just put, we got a couple people who also want to speak to this point, but I'll say this first. The governor came into office with a long list of things he wanted, right? In order to have a healthy and positive negotiation, both parties need to show up with things that they want, right? And then you can give and take, right? We haven't had that healthy give and take because, as you mentioned, there's been, we've just, I think, said a lot of no to what the governor's proposed. I think this, what we're putting forth here is the beginning of the process to enable us to have the give and take that's going to reach compromise. Representative Ammons and Wallace want to speak to here.
And I think it's important to understand that because a person has an agenda that they want to meet doesn't mean that we're not being understanding of that agenda. I think every member up here completely understands what the governor is asking for. I don't think any of us are lost on what he's asking for. What we're suggesting by coming up with our own agenda is here are some initiatives that we believe as strongly as he believes that will address the needs of the people of Illinois. And it is our responsibility to come up with a plan that we can now sit down and say, well, what is it that you want? What is it that we want? And how do we get to the middle of that? But if you suggest that we're being unreasonable by not taking up what we believe are initiatives he's proposing that will decimate families in our communities, that is an unfair view of the situation. What I would suggest is part of the 5 initiatives under this plan. One of them is publicly funded campaigns. Everyone in the media understands exactly what this means. A person who can outspend everyone in the General Assembly has the loudest bully pulpit. And what we're saying today is we will join our efforts together, combine our resources and our communities, and say that is not the only solution that exists, and we will spread our message louder and clearer, even though we don't have the money to outraise the big corporate interests. That's what the agenda really represents, is that the people said, this is what is important to us, and we want our representatives to respond by moving initiatives that respond to that agenda. And that's what this is about.
21 months into this. So
Yes, we
why
are.
did it take so long to get to this point to come up with a proposal from Democrats?
I think something that he just referenced is that many of us have been trying for the last couple of years, and I don't speak for my colleagues here at all, but many of us have been trying for the last several years to be open-minded and reasonable to the initiatives that were put before us by the governor. But each time we attempted to, and the Senate knows this better than I do, each time we attempted to negotiate in good faith on some of those initiatives, the ball moved further down the court. And as long as the ball is a moving object, there's no way for us to come to permanent solution with the governor's agenda. And so now we've said, okay, we heard you out. We've not been able to come to terms with yours, and here we go. We're going to put forward another agenda that we believe is better than the one on the table. I don't think so.
But there's been talk of that. Some people don't agree with how Senator Madigan has proceeded or how President Fullerton has proceeded.
Look, we are in uncharted waters. We have never faced a situation where we've had this kind of a standoff that causes such harm to the people of Illinois. I think for many of us, our early frustration was subsumed by some sense that the system was going to work, as it usually had worked. People reached compromise, even when they started at polar opposites. That hasn't been working, and that has led to this groundswell from members elected to represent their districts saying, I've had enough. We can't sit and wait for a couple of people to resolve their differences. We need to come up with a proactive agenda that benefits the people that we represent in our districts.
The grand bargain was kind of a compromise, I think, with Senator Radonio and President Fullerton. I know the Democratic caucus was very frustrated that apparently the governor interfered with the Republican votes on that. Relative to what you're doing here and on the budget, where do you see the issues of the grand bargain going forward? Would the grand bargain be part of this comeback agenda?
The grand bargain is still before the Senate. We may take votes on it today. This is a separate endeavor. It certainly could complement what's happening there, but this is a standalone bicameral effort to put together a progressive agenda that we can all rally around.
Democrats have majorities in both chambers. What's the likelihood of you guys just doing this all on your own without any Republicans, without any debate, anything along those lines, just make it happen?
I think we're still very hopeful that we've just put these ideas on the table. Obviously, some of our Republican colleagues responded before they even saw them. I would hope that when they see them, they might not think they are so partisan. Yeah.
So I just want. My name is Jamie Andrade. All right. My name is Jamie Andrade. I'm the state rep for the 40th district. One of the things that we want you to consider is that Rauner has a misconception that thinks that Democrats, all they want is just an income tax increase. That is not what Democrats just want. He thinks that he's doing us a favor. Oh, we'll give it. So that's why this agenda is put forward. The governor is mistaken when he thinks that all Democrats want is just an income tax increase. And that's why I believe that's not just what the Democrats want. They want a holistic plan that moves everyone forward.
I'd like to, so let's speak briefly about some of the things that are put forth. And you'll see, you just received the handout. There's several bills in the House and the Senate that have been put forth. I'll speak to just one specific one only because it became my pet issue over the last couple of years. It always had bipartisan support, and that is the notion that we should provide subsidies for low-income families to be able to go to work. However, in the last couple of years, that's not been the case. We had 2 years ago where the governor completely decimated our child care assistance program, making it very difficult for individuals to get to work and provide for themselves and to stay off of other forms of public assistance. So these specific items that are listed either traditionally had bipartisan support, already currently have bipartisan co-sponsors, or I believe we have the will to work together to make sure that we're able to bring others to the table. But I want to echo what Representative Gazzardi just stated. We have heard time and time again what the turnaround agenda is, what the reform agenda is. I don't think that we necessarily need to continue to go down that road. Hopefully, you'll take a look at what is presented here, again, from the House and the Senate, and again, There are several bills that are already co-sponsored by Republicans. So I think it was very premature for them to come out against something when some of them have already signed on to pieces of legislation that are included in this comeback agenda that benefit everyone in Illinois, no matter, who cares if it's a D or R, right? These are things that we need to be paying attention to. It's actually not more spending. We actually have decreased over several years the income requirement. It used to be up to 200%. We're at 185, actually 162 under the governor's rules, so it was previously 185. We've kicked off non-traditional college students. So those are individuals who are in college, who are parents. We've said you can't have subsidies during class time. These are people who are on the brink of achieving degrees and going on to getting careers that are going to pay them salaries where we won't have to pay for Medicaid, SNAP benefits, ongoing child care subsidies, low-income housing. I mean, this is just a common sense policy that, until a couple of years ago, had overwhelming bipartisan support. Overwhelming.
Well, no, I just want to, I've been very involved, I think, as many of you know, in trying to work on the bipartisan efforts in the Senate. I've also been involved in this effort. I don't think they're mutually exclusive, and I want to say a little bit about why. And one, I want to say I really appreciate the level of concern and frustration I hear from all of you. I personally am bereft and highly angry at what the lack of action in Springfield is doing to the state of Illinois, to all of our residents, to every single business here. I think this is amoral in what's happening right now in the state of Illinois. I think it's patently absurd and really horrific what our inaction is doing. Every day it gets worse for people around the state. It's just plain wrong. We have been bending over backwards in the Senate, really trying to work on a grand bargain, as you all know, with the Republicans. I'm going to continue to work on that effort. My whole heart believes that trying to do something in a bipartisan fashion leads to better policy. I really think compromise is the notion of how things work in a governmental system. That's just the nature of democracy. You give and take. You have to do that. And I think that's the only way we're really going to advance and make things better for the folks in the state of Illinois. That said, I can't continue down the path of only going one way when they keep moving the ball and think that we keep doing the same thing over and over. That's the definition of insanity. It hasn't been working. So, this, I think, is an effort to try to say, let's put out another set of agendas that we think might also be helpful in really pushing forward good outcomes for people in the state of Illinois and start broadening the dialogue. Maybe by doing that, we can get to an outcome that brings everybody together. As I say, we've been stuck in a rut here in the Senate. I continue to hope that maybe we'll get a vote on the grand bargain. I'm just not convinced that's going to happen given the way the Republicans have been behaving there. So, got to keep trying.
Just say two quick sentences from their statement, have somebody react to it if you can. Any effort to fix the political system that doesn't include term limits or district reform isn't a serious one. Illinoisans want a balanced budget with real spending caps, true property tax freeze, and economic reforms to grow jobs. What do you think of?
Yeah, I'll say briefly, you'll note that many of those issues are in fact addressed in this agenda, right? We talk about fair maps, right? We talk about good jobs, right? We talk about a lot of these issues, economic development in our state. So, it's unfortunate, as has already been mentioned, that the Republicans decided to take a swing at this before they even knew what they were swinging at. And I'll also say that, Senator McGuire wanted to say something.
Thank you. Pat McGuire, State Senator, District 43, Chair of the Senate Higher Education Committee, and backbencher. Affordable higher education serves the interests of working families and corporations. Higher education, as we know, in the state of Illinois is adrift. The governor appears to have no policy for higher education in our state, so our public universities, community colleges, and also a good number, unfortunately, of our private institutions are adrift. They're going to crash on the rocks and break apart. One of the high watermarks of bipartisan cooperation in the General Assembly was last April when, with all yes votes, a $600 million supplemental appropriation passed in rapid time. It was quickly signed by the governor, and that got $600 million out the door for MAP grants to low-income students and also to our public universities and community colleges. Again, job creators don't get excited by term limits. Job creators get excited by a skilled, talented, well-educated workforce. The day after the governor gave his budget address, I asked his budget director, what the plans are, what the administration's plans are for a similar supplemental appropriation for higher education, a la last April's. He said there are no plans, that the administration has no interest in a supplemental appropriation to backfill FY17's higher education needs until the governor achieves an FY18 budget with structural reforms. So in the face of this increased obduracy from the governor, we need progressive agendas like the one being put forth this morning.
Well, I heard backbencher a couple of times, and I heard rank and file, but I see Leader Harmon, and a minute ago I saw Leader Curry, and that's almost, that's a heartbeat away from the top in the Senate and the House. So to what extent are the President and Speaker involved in this or giving their blessings?
I can only speak for the Senate side. Our coalition that came together reflected a variety of folks on the leadership team, chairs of important committees, and new members of our caucus. It was a really broad-based group that started talking about this. We are very fortunate in the Senate. John Cullerton has a long history as a progressive legislator and has been very encouraging of our conversations. I'm sure you'll check with him at some point, but I don't think there's anything on this agenda that Senator John Cullerton wouldn't have supported before he was Senate President, and I hope that he'll be supportive of us in his current role.
I can't imagine the Speaker is going to like Constitutional Amendment number 1, the graduated tax. That's got to be as popular as broccoli in his chamber.
I would disagree. I would disagree. I think that a fair income tax is a fundamental component of solving our state's problems, and I think there's broad support in the House. I think, frankly, from my conversations over the last several years as the chief sponsor, is there's quiet support among Republicans. When I call this for a vote in the Senate, I expect to get a bipartisan supermajority. Now, I think that there's clearly a chilling effect. I think the one who least likes this idea is Governor Rauner, and we have to overcome that. But, how much money did he make last year? $165 million? I suppose there's a little capacity to pay a little more in state income tax when you make that much money.
Even if you do get supermajorities to get that on the ballot, though, I mean, that doesn't go into effect until years from now. I mean, how do you address current budget pressures?
We still have to deal with the next fiscal year, but if it were on the ballot in 2018, it would go into effect immediately. And it's clearly a linchpin in solving our long-term budget problems. We'll still have to deal with the short-term problems. There's no doubt about that.
Yesterday, the governor talked about ethics reforms and term limits and whatnot, but he also talked about fair maps. This is part of this package. Why not get it out there on the floor of both chambers, pass it immediately, get it to the governor's desk?
Well, again, I think what you see here is many areas in which there's broad bipartisan agreement, right? You talk about ethics reforms. That's another thing that we talk about here in this agenda if you have a look in the government reform section. So I think there are a lot of opportunities for us to cooperate. This agenda doesn't represent an interest in retrenchment or refusal to work with the other party by any means. That's not what we want to do here at all. Solving the crisis that our state is facing right now is going to be very difficult, right? And it's going to require a lot of difficult decisions on behalf of all of us in both chambers, in both parties. And the objective of this agenda, we've heard a lot about what the governor wants to get out of this. The objective of this agenda is to set forth some things that we want to get out of this so that when we are able to reach compromise, it's something that satisfies a diverse set of constituencies and gives us all something to go home and tell our constituents we won on, right? I think it's a vital precursor to us solving these problems.
Senator Harmon, with these items now, there's all these different bills that each accomplish or going to accomplish one of these items. The premise of the grand bargain is each bill is contingent on each other. One has to pass, they all have to pass, everything goes. Are you trying to work this comeback plan like that to where you want all of these to get through, or would you be happy with one or two or three of the items getting through and maybe the others not?
These are the 5 bills we've identified are representative of the broader vision we have for the state of Illinois. They're not the end-all and the be-all. They're things we think we can accomplish in the short run. They don't need to be linked. I would hope there'll be 5 more after that and 5 more and 5 more as we move towards a progressive Illinois. But we got to fight these things. To the last question, the governor is very good at giving things names that sound good and are popular. But as an example, the governor's version of a fair map is anything but fair. And we as Democrats aren't going to support a redistricting plan that structurally disadvantages African American and Latino voters, as his proposal does. We're happy to sit down and negotiate a truly fair map, one that is good for the people we represent. But that's the kind of negotiation we have to have, the earnest conversations about what really is fair for the people that sent us here to Springfield.
You mentioned that the linchpin of this thing is the progressive tax. How do you just avoid 2018 turning into Republicans spending a fair amount of money saying Democrats just want to tax more?
Well, geez, I think if you look at any proposal about the progressive income tax, what you've seen time and time again, Senator Harmon can speak to this in more detail, is that what we're proposing to the people of Illinois is that for the vast, overwhelming majority of folks, we want to lower your taxes, right? That what we've seen is that there's been an enormous accumulation of wealth in the hands of the Bruce Rauner class in this state and in this country over the last several decades, and that a smart and sensible tax policy would follow that wealth, right? Would make sure that the folks who are able to draw down $165 million pay more in their taxes than the folks who are 100. Well, there you go. Anyhow, Senator Harmon, if you want to respond, then maybe we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, just it's a critical ingredient. But if we don't solve our budget problem right now, after the next governor's election, the stack of unpaid bills is going to be about $24 billion. The Rauner income tax that's going to be required to pay those bills down and balance our budget going forward is going to be absolutely enormous. A fair tax would allow us to cut taxes on most Illinois families. When I had this up in the last General Assembly, the rate structure that we had proposed would have cut the taxes for 94% of Illinois families. And that was when the tax was just at 5%. The Rauner income tax is going to be enormous if we're going to expect to pay off our bills and balance the budget long term. So I think it's a critical ingredient to protect people, middle-class families, upper-middle-class families, from an enormous tax increase that's right around the corner. And even if we solve the budget problem today, it's going to be difficult to do. So thank you all very much. We appreciate you taking the time.